Okay. This is going to be, humans, I warn you now, this is going to be intense.
I wouldn't say that.
I would, because I know you, I know what you feel about this game, and I know that you're going to be very passionate about it. So please take it away.
Honestly, I thought you were gonna like take your headphones off and go, I will let you rant and I'm gonna leave you alone. So we a couple weeks ago we had Mike Selinker on here and we talked at length about his games and his new games coming up. Lords of Vegas, which had a reprint that was got released actually just this month, and I spoke of my favorite game he's ever done, a game called Apocrypha, what I own here. Now, as a full disclosure, I have never paid for an Apocrypha. Everything I've gotten for Apocrypha has been through previews. So take that under advisement. It was one of the only gifts I was ever given from the Dice Tower when I was working there. And then Lone Shark sent me the expansions because I begged it because I loved the format. For those people who don't know, this is an urban horror game. There's very few of those out there. Most games are horror, like sci-fi horror or H.P. Lovecraft horror. This is very much urban horror inspired by things like the X-Files or Supernatural, which is a genre that doesn't get used a lot. This system was made first. He then made the Pathfinder adventure card game, which exploded, so that became the really successful one. I prefer Apocrypha over Pathfinder. My friend who went with Rampant Wolf Games believes the opposite. He labeled the Pathfinder adventure card game as his all-time favorite game of all time. But why? Why is this game good? The first thing is that it's partially a deck builder. It's a game where you build a deck of cards and then you play in a campaign, a legacy style campaign over many episodes. If you have all 3 expansions, it's 65 episodes. So it's a very long game.
That's like 3 seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Exactly. Or 1 Gloomhaven. But the compasses it all into a card box. And I criticize the writing of the rules. It's not anything to learn. It is a relatively large book at 30 some pages. Now, there's 2 things to really understand. Every character has 4 abilities: body, mind, rage, and soul. And your character sheet is a card. Your numbers are on the outside perimeter of that card. That orientation is important because it helps you to aid other players on your left and right hand side of your table. This game has a cooperative aspect, which is meta, which affects the orientation of the players around the table board, which is true. There's also an aspect where your character is on the board location that tells you where you can also help there as well. It's actually quite fascinating. The other critical mechanic is the scaling of card costs. And what I mean by that is a card can say discard. The hierarchy is critically important. If you have a card that says sacrifice, then you put it back in the box. It's gone
forever.
If you bury it, you put it underneath your Saints player sheet. You get to have that card back at the end of that episode. It's not gone forever, but you've lost it for that episode. Those are the 2 really bad ones. Then you have discard. Discard puts it into your discard pile. Then there's the 3 really good ones: recycling, shuffling, and reloading. Recycling, you put it at the bottom of your deck. Shuffling, you shuffle it inside your deck. And reload, you put it on top of your deck. That means the next time you draw a card, you get that card right back. Brilliant idea. And it encourages you to have a smaller deck. Now, you actually have to have a smaller deck. How big? Well, my deck for Dr. Zeus, my unlicensed necrosurgeon, is only 12 cards. Is it 7? Yeah, 12 cards. And that's how everyone's deck is. Your deck will always be 12 cards. If you gain more additional cards at the end of the episode, you have to rebuild your deck down to 12 cards. It is critically important. Not only that, if you look at a character sheet like this one right here, it tells you which composition of those cards you have to have. So you can only have 4 mind cards. You can only have 2. So not only is these numbers your strength of that value, it also tells you how big that deck can be. And that's critically important. But since there are hundreds and hundreds of cards, you're not stuck with bad versions of these cards. You can create a deck that is entirely custom for your character. A good example is Dr. Z's has an ability that says, if I play a Wicked or Healing Gift, I lower the cost by 1. And what that means is that I lower the hierarchy cost. So suddenly a card that says that's a Wicked card, like this Jekyll formula, instead of being discarded, it goes back in my deck. That means I don't lose it. It'll come back into my hand eventually, because like any other game, if you run out of cards, if you can't draw a card, you're basically knocked out. That's the first thing. That's how the whole game works. Not only is this deck your card of abilities, it's also your hit points, which is another, like almost every single value and card has a double or triple purpose. When you do an episode will tell you how to configure. You grab cards, which are not unlike the cards of your deck. You seed them in a location. It'll tell you, each episode will tell you which location, like a school, a university, a tavern. And then you seed each of those locations with a random assortment of these cards. And each one will tell you how many random mind cards, how many random body cards, and then also seed opponents, which are monsters you have to defeat. Somewhere in one of these locations are the primary villains you have to fight. So if you move from one location, it's almost like you're going into a dungeon, and that dungeon has a deck of cards. You turn over that first card, and you go, oh, I find a trauma kit. And now in order to gain this card and add it to your deck, you have to defeat it using these 2 values, which are right here.
Okay.
Right? So in this one, there's a 13 on mind and or a 10 in body. My character sucks at body, but he's really good in mind. So I will try to gain that card and add it to my deck. And when you do it, it comes right into your hand, which means you get to be more powerful. Right? And so not only is your deck of hit points getting larger if you acquire these artifacts, that means when you go up against enemies, you have to spend the exact same cards you've been acquiring to gain benefits. And that's the next genius part of this game. You only use D6s. This is where I find it's a better game than Pathfinder. And this is what I was trying to get to, Mike, where I find it's a better game. With this game, you gain a certain number of dice. So for example, with our Necrosurgeon, if I do a challenge for mind, I get to use 4 dice. It says 4 at the top here. I get to use 4 dice. I grab 4 dice, and they're color-coded, so I get 4 purple dice. You can only use the highest 3 values. So no matter how many dice you get, you can only ever take the highest 3 values. So something like that Monsterpedia, it has an 11. So I have to roll 11, and since I have 4 dice, I have a pretty good chance of getting 3 dice if you add together equal 11. But maybe it's not. Maybe I'm at a villain that needs a 15. And maybe it's not. Maybe I have to use body, which I only have 2 dice for. That's where you can start using these artifacts. You start discarding artifacts to get you more dice. Allies can come in, and they can give you their dice. So next thing you know, you could end up having 6 or 7 dice to roll based on cooperation, based on the cards you spend. And if you roll that dice, you get that high value, you defeat that monster, or you claim that artifact. Now, that is itself the basis of the game. You eventually see through these decks, you gain cards, and if you end up the game with more cards than 12, then you have to go through, find the cards you have, and slowly whittle yourself down to the 12 cards you want to keep for the next episode. But because you're getting cool cards, you may end up getting better cards and go, oh, I don't want this crappy card that I've been having for the last 2 sessions. I'm going to get rid of that and keep one of these new cards I got. Not only that, but the episodes themselves give you part of this. I've been listing up this, which is the character sheet. My character sheets at the beginning. These are echoes. As you play the game, there's a narrative component as well. You might get one of these, which gives you a memory of your character's past. So as you're building your character, you're actually getting a history to your character as well. How you get these cards is quite fascinating. They're actually, some situations, they're the actual episode you just completed. This is the actual adventure card that became a memory fragment. And then, if you die, you can slip a death into one of these spots. If this whole area gets filled with death cards, your character is perma-dead for the entire campaign. That being said, if you look carefully, That's not hard. That's not easy to do, as I don't have any death cards after nearly 3 months of or about 12 episodes of playing this game. I have not died, knock on wood. And there are ways to remove these death memories as well. And eventually, not only you're thinking, well, 12 episodes, you'll have 12 cards. No, you don't always get a memory card when you complete a mission, but more so than that, these memory cards all have one-shot abilities. One supremely powerful, which means you can sacrifice that memory to gain a permanent boost when you really need it, which means you're actually going to be spending these, and they go back in the box. And eventually, later down the campaign, like way down the campaign, you will eventually get permanent boosts that actually improve your character permanently. But these are way down the road. The other thing I like about the game is that when I say, oh, yeah, that's so it's just you're seeding dungeons, you go into the dungeon and you basically, the campaign itself takes huge sections. Ones where in one, all of the dungeon was under one deck. There were ones where it's in a line and you have to go in sequence. Ones where you can bounce to different locations. There are, every time you enter a new campaign, there's a new mechanic that is coming. Either the cards change, there's a whole sequence with the werewolves and a blood mechanic. So every time you go into a new batch of episodes, there's a brand new twist to the story. One of the things you get, part of your deck, are omens. Omens give you the ability to enter a location. Some omens are good, some omens are bad. As you play the campaign, the number of good omens decreases and decreases. We haven't got to this point yet, but eventually when you get into the last few episodes, all the omens are bad, which means they will cripple you going into an adventure, which means if you go into a location, you play an omen card, you may have no choice. You may have to play a bad omen, which will make that encounter harder. When you create locations, there's a random selection of omens. You get a certain number of omens in your hand. And the game gives you a certain deck of omens at the start of an adventure. Once that omen card is out, if you haven't completed the mission, you lose the game. So there's a timer on top of that. Like I said, every card has 2 or 3 purposes. You grab an omen, you have to play that omen or an omen in your hand to enter a location. You enter a location, you confront what you see, and then if you have another omen, you could play again. There is so much variety within this game. Now, why do I think it's better than Pathfinder? Pathfinder doesn't do the dice mechanic the same way. Mm-hmm. It uses die scaling. So you have a die 4, you can upgrade to a die 6, you can upgrade to a die 8. Sometimes you'll gain additional dice, like a die 6 and a die 4, but it doesn't do the dice mitigation with die 6s. It doesn't give you, here's some extra dice, here's some extra dice, then you roll them all, and then you take the highest 3. It's, here's your 1 die, then you can maybe upgrade, and then maybe you'll get another die, and then you have to hit that same penalty. Now, the reason why mechanically I find it inferior is that if you're rolling 3 dice, 3 die 6, you have a much higher chance of getting a higher value than if you just rolled a 1 die 12. From you're looking at the odds of the parabola of the median number value. You have...
Oops. I'm losing you, Chris.
But you still there?
Yeah, I lost you for a few seconds.
Are you still recording?
Yep.
Okay. Also, going to saying that if you have a die 8 and a die 4 for your character in Pathfinder, you could roll a 1 and a 1 and get a 2. If you're rolling 3 die 6, there's a much greater chance of you rolling. So the die mechanic within Pathfinder, I think, is a bit too random compared to the die 6 mechanic in Apocrypha. I find it's mechanically stronger. I think it fits better. And so I find, even though the Pathfinder has so many more cards because it's so much more successful, I find Apocrypha to be a stronger game narratively. I think it's a stronger game thematically. I think it's a stronger game when it comes to the level of cooperation. You don't cooperate as much in Pathfinder. So yeah, if you want to be able to play a game where you have a lot of fun, a lot of campaigns, a lot of story, it's a little goofy in places. As Mike was talking about it in our interview, the fact that there's a point where you have to defeat werewolves that are coming in, and they're a rival sports team to your town's team. So you have to defeat the werewolves that are quite literally all in jerseys.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little goofy, but like I said, 9.5 out of 10. One of my favorite games. Apocrypha. Find it on Lone Wolf site. Sorry, Lone Shark Games. They did mention that they are whittling down. So get them while it's hot.
It's a real shame that Apocrypha didn't become a full app like the Pathfinder game did. Because
yeah.
I've played Apocrypha once, a couple of years, 3 years ago, and I haven't got it out again for one reason alone, and is that it's the kind of game where I need to leave it on the table so I can keep playing later on. Because if I put it away, I will not take it out, which has exactly what's happened. And I cannot leave it out because if I do, then my dog will probably eat half the pieces and the cards, and I don't want that to happen. So that is annoying. But I remember having a blast playing it. I know there is an app out there that's meant to help. It's meant to help you managing the cards, but it didn't become the full app, and it's a pity because I agree with you. I think thematically, narratively, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's just amazing. Part of me wishes that once the remaining copies are gone, they will never print it again. Because that means that will be one of the very cool people who has the game. But part of me hopes that this game is reprinted because I think it should reach as wide a public as possible.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's it from me. Do you have anything else?
Oh no, that was it. I felt that we got everything covered.
Which is amazing because this is 1 hour exactly. So I think it is time to say goodbye and say thank you to everyone who's been listening. I would love to hear what people have to say about the topics we've discussed tonight, both about Gygax being a sexist person, the Lost Mountain Saga being an absolutely gorgeous campaign, and Apocrypha being the most beautiful narrative urban horror game ever. So let us know what you think. Find me on Blue Sky, where I am a Paco GMS magazine at bsky.app. They need to sort out that thing. It's very difficult. Zither has it easier. I'm still there, but not interacting with anyone. I'm just pushing my tweets for engagement toward my channel. But I am on Facebook too much and too often. So say hello, and you can also say hello on email, podcast@gmsmagazine.com.
This is Chris from Deus Ex Machina. I am on Blue Sky now under Deus Ex Machina, and you'll find me there. I'm trying to get more people. So if you follow me, I will try to follow you back. I'm trying to pay it forward. I've been asking people, friends, to send me their Blue Sky addresses. So I am on Blue Sky. I'm trying to be predominant and post. I don't do Twitter anymore. And of course, we have Facebook and YouTube as well.
Good. So, humans, thank you so much once more for being there. We look forward to having you back very, very soon indeed. But until the next time, take care.
Thank you. Bye.